You are at Lake Rant, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for Talcon, who says, rant about the appeal of Madoka Magica. Your video critiquing its deconstructive merits is among my favorites, but you still seem to enjoy the series. I can't think of any good points with the exception of some interesting cinematography from our boy Shinbo and passable character designs. But the story beats are pretty bland. The characters are mostly one knot, and I could not find any strong subtext or themes driving the story. What is it you find appealing about this Urobuchi work? I was thinking about asking this one for quite a while and noticed it has some crossover with the previous one. I don't give a fuck. Feel free to combine them. Well, okay. If we're talking about subtext and themes, like, I think there's abundant themes in the story. I mean, there was a video that I talked about in one of the previous rants about the theme of what was the word that he used? The theme of like trauma in the series. It definitely is setting out to explore that on some level. I would say that there's God, it's been a long time since I watched Madoka. I feel like I talked about some of the themes in my video about Madoka. I don't know if the one about it being deconstructive was the same as just like my Madoka Magica review that was like 20 minutes long, but I did some character analysis and some thematic analysis in that. I mean, I don't think it's fair to say that a character like, say, Sayaka is a completely one-note character. I think that, there's more than one facet to her personality. I do think that, like, the characters are... I think that they're less strong as characters that, like, you would necessarily enjoy. They're more, like, proponents of the themes in the narrative. They're more there to, like, convey this story and to just basically represent what they represent, you know. Again, it's hard for me to really talk about this without having seen the show in a long time and to, like, use more exact phrasing. But, like, I do think each character sort of represents an idea. And that's generally how Urobuchi's writing is. Like, if you were to watch, say, Psycho-Pass, each character basically represents an ideology, and it's the conflict of those ideologies that drives the show. It's mostly a meditation on those ideologies. I think Madoka is very similar. It's less about ideology per se and more about the different ways that these characters are coping with their situation and trying to deal with it, and their competing logic of, like, what is the best way to go about what they're doing, you know? So they end up competing with each other because of the fact that they have different, you know, ways of going about what they're going about, different reasons that they're involved in this thing. And so exploring that, I think, is like the central kind of point of the story. I think it's told in an interesting way, I guess. I think it's cool how the show basically starts off as one thing, hits this episode 3 major dramatic turning point. The midsection of the show is more of like an interpersonal drama, but then by the end it turns into like a third show that's like its own self-contained little mini narrative. It has sort of 3 arcs in that way, and I think the way that those arcs interplay with each other is interesting. I think it's definitely a show that's simultaneously better on the second viewing because you get what the hell it's supposed to be more. Like, I didn't know where it was really going the first time. So, like, a lot of the mid-section episodes weren't as interesting to me because I didn't get why, for instance, Madoka's not really doing anything. It's like, well, we're not in her arc. We're really, like, in the, you know, this is the part where we focus on Sayaka's thing. This is the part where we focus on Kyoko's thing. Like, you gotta look at it not as this story that's constantly moving, but more as, looking at different angles of the same idea being proposed to different characters, I guess. And I also think the aesthetic is really striking and cool. The music is good. I mean, like, I'm not the hugest Madoka Magica fan. I don't think it's like a god-tier show, but I think there's more than enough intrigue in the writing and characterization and overall tone and style of the show to make it something really unique and distinctive and memorable. And, it has some classic scenes, of course. I guess if you don't like the show, I don't know if I could really sell you on it. Like, I'm not really the type of person who tends to change my opinion dramatically on a show. But if your concern is that you don't think there's strong subtext or themes, go watch some analysis videos. I mean, aside from mine, there's tons of people have talked about this show. Just type Madoka Magica analysis. You will find people talking about their interpretations and takes. Maybe you'll get something out of that. I'm sure I've seen some that I appreciated, though I'm struggling to think of any off the top of my head, because again, this is not a show that I'm like obsessed with and that I would consume gobs of content about. But I have heard interesting cases for like what the what things in the show mean, and I could have sworn in my review again that I did a little bit more talking about the character beats and themes. So yeah, I don't know. Look into it. Beyond me.